The Tertiary Education Trust Fund is a body set up by the federal government of Nigeria to arrest the rot and deterioration in the educational infrastructure caused by a long period of neglect and very poor resource allocation. In 2011, TETFund was refocused to intervene in public tertiary institutions, that is, universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education, for maximum impact. The Tertiary Education Trust Fund Act 2011 imposes a 2% education tax on the assessable profit of all registered companies in Nigeria. TETFund is charged with the responsibility to manage, disburse, and monitor the education tax to public tertiary institutions in the country. The agency administers the tax imposed by the Act and disburses the amount to tertiary education institutions at federal and state levels. Specifically, TETFund's cardinal objective is to provide the badly needed funds to support tertiary education, to provide enhanced scholarship in the country, both in content and physical development, with the aim of improving the quality of higher education. TETFund interventions are anchored on the following areas: normal intervention, library intervention, research grant, academic staff training and development, publication of journal, manuscript development, and conference attendance. With the appointment of its current executive secretary, Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro, TETFund became more than just an intervention agency, but also a critical instrument for Nigeria's economic development. TETFund became a driving force for the institutionalization of research and development in a bid to firmly establish Nigeria as a prosperous producer nation that is self-sufficient and capable of exporting complex products that attract true wealth. The next two editions of the Paradigm Shift will focus on Professor Bogoro's R&D initiative and the journey so far, while examining its key successes. The Apostle of R&D gives us an overview of his vision.
We'll be talking more about factor-based engagement of issues on television, on radio, in the newspapers. You will have database that is reliable. At the moment, National Bureau of Statistics is doing a good job. I must say so. They're doing a good job, granted some of their limitations. I believe that they can be strengthened and they have complementarity. That if at the end of the day we have the NDRF and there is a strong database with information generated and reference across the world, it will be one of the most dependable, because we need to have a database where you are sure of the information there is reliable. The idea of focusing on R&D as a priority area for the academia that our law permits us to fund from TETFund started in 2014. And I wrote, the Board of Trustees asked me to articulate my vision for 5 years as Executive Secretary of TETFund. And I wrote a 6-pointer. And one of the 6 pillars of my vision was the institutionalization of R&D in Nigeria beyond the academia. And it was supposed to be, we thought, at the level of TETFund. Somebody would ask, why bother about picking on an area of amongst the many out there? And it was very simple. At TETFund, we have the mandate by law of the organization to intervene in priority areas that will improve teaching and learning, quality of education, etc., etc. And since the educational institutions, being the public ones, specifically universities, federal, state, polytechnics, federal, state, colleges of education, federal, state, have very clear priorities, being teaching, research, and community development. It was very, very clear that we needed to know what are the priority interventions consistent with the expectations of the client. And I think that is one, for me, that is the year, of course, I was barely a month or 2 in office as Executive Secretary of TETFund, 2014. And for me, I reflected over what I know obtains, for instance, in the university system where I operated, and I still operate anyway, as a professor. And I realized that we have a major problem. Major problem being we are not prioritizing research enough. We tend to have been emphasizing teaching, of course, at the expense of research. And I insist that one shapes, defines, and strengthens the other. Definitely it is research that shapes, strengthens, and defines teaching. If you are teaching and you are not improving courtesy of research, either through pedagogic skills, etc., then the quality of teaching and communication of knowledge diminishes. And that is the idea of my deciding on promoting the institutionalization of R&D, and there were actually supposed to be 2 levels. One, even emphasizing research in the university system, of course, as well as polytechnics and colleges of education, was important. But beyond that, I noticed a clear weakness in the Nigerian environment, being that the academia was much less concerned about establishing partnership, reaching out to industry. And I thought that was patently wrong. And I realized this over time. The worst aspect of it, each time I recall and I discovered when colleagues in their idle time, we are discussing even within the 4 walls of the ivory towers. Academia wasn't our priority. We were discussing most likely the next strike actions that we may have to go for to make demands from government. But at the end of the day, the fact is, besides that, you are likely to find people discussing who is likely to be the next vice chancellor. And I believe the same thing with the polytechnics, the next rector, the next provost for colleges of education. Who will be the next deputy vice chancellor, deputy rector? Who is likely to be the next dean of faculty, head of department, director of academic, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that was disturbing. And I felt this needs to be corrected. Let us focus for once, put more emphasis on research, deepening research for what I call problem solving.
Research is not new to Nigeria's academic circles. Intellectuals in universities have been carrying out research in various fields pretty much since the beginning of tertiary education. However, the TETFund boss has stressed the need for applied research. Applied research is a research methodology that creates practical solutions for specific problems, while basic research is an approach to research that seeks to expand knowledge in a field of study. This means that applied research is solution-driven, while basic research is knowledge-specific. Unlike basic research, which is somewhat subjective in its approach, applied research is an objective method of inquiry. Typically, applied research is unbiased because it arrives at outcomes by subjecting empirical evidence in standardized scientific procedures, and this makes it a more valid research method. In the health sector, for example, applied research helps health and medical practitioners to develop evidence-based solutions to pressing health problems. On the other hand, basic research helps medical practitioners gain insights into different health issues such as the origin and symptoms of diseases and infections, which can be useful in developing a cure for such conditions. Applied research in health could include an investigation to determine the healing properties of mushrooms, or an investigation to determine the side effects of alcohol consumption. Information gathered here leads to the development of products and services.
For too long, we seem to have been undertaking research for the purpose of increasing the numbers of publications, and we celebrate the numbers. We seem to have been celebrating less of the quality of the publications. And that is why many factors actually are responsible. If you don't have a good research outcome, you cannot sell it to a quality journal, globally rated quality journal. You couldn't. And these are some of the things that I reflected over, and I discovered we were shy of or very happy to avoid globally rated journals for that purpose. But that is not to say that all journal publication must be in globally rated. There are a number of journals that are, you can call them local, institution-based, nationally rated, continentally rated. They are relevant in the context of the outcome of that particular or those types of research activities that will solve problems. That is why I made a case first in TETFund. How do we proceed? The strategy to institutional R&D was, TETFund does not have a department for R&D. Why don't we have it? And I said, to do that, let us tie it to centers of excellence. That is the issue of quality. Quality of segments, of parts of activities in a university or anywhere else. That's what a center of excellence is. So we decided, let there be, I made a case of the 6-point pillar articulated. I requested for creation of R&D and Centers of Excellence department. And thank God, as we talk today, it came to be. Well, the board was happy to approve, but they approved 100% of all that I asked for. And that is how R&D Center of Excellence department came. We are concerned because, let me say this, some people have said, well, TETFund is doing some things that maybe you thought NUC, NBT, NCC are supposed to be doing. And I said, hey, do you want us to just be putting money anywhere? It is wrong. We must put money in the right place. So by the law of TETFund, NUC, NBT, NCC are members of the board. That's their chief executive, being the executive secretaries of these three institutions. They are members of the board of trustees of TETFund, so that they guide us. Together we sit with them. They are the ones that guide us. They regulate and give policy direction to the beneficiary institutions that we fund. So we need to hear them. And today I can tell you, we're working exceptionally close with the National Universities Commission, NBTE, NCCE, in many areas. NCCE, for instance, come and say, look, TETFund should put some money on the teacher practice. We've been doing that. The polytechnics, hey, let's have some money on fabrications. We've been doing that, as well as what do you call it? Enterprise, entrepreneurship, as it were, for both universities and polytechnics. I mean, we listen to the regulators and we are guided. So that is how TETFund has naturally been involved.
The overarching aspiration of the TETFund Standing Committee for Research and Development is the establishment of the National R&D Foundation, which will seek and provide funding for academic research for development. But TETFund isn't just focused on the provision of funding. It is also intervening through its academic department in the development of skills to package winning research grant proposals. Professor Bogoro said a lot of Nigerian professors are not capable of getting global grants for research because of poor research proposals. Despite the growing number of Nigerian professors, said to be at about 8,000, the TETFund boss is worried that many professors have low capacity to write quality research proposals.
As we are talking now, we have a capacity building training for grant writing skills because we identified in liaison with the regulatory agencies that there is very poor capacity for writing quality research grants by lecturers. And that is not good news. It couldn't be. And so TETFund is putting money, and beyond that, each time during the trainings, we also globalize the whole environment operating in the campuses. What are our priorities? What are we discussing? Are we discussing in ourselves more of the issues being discussed in the National Assembly, or looking at the larger picture of the problem that we can, through research? Well, talking about, let me even say this, that when I returned in 2019, within the year we were able to inaugurate the new National Research Fund Committee, and of course that of Technical Advisory Group, which is addressing some aspect of content. National Research Fund, of course, addressing the issue of the research grant, the higher limit of up to 50 million. And of course, we are emphasizing productive research, problem-solving research. But then last year, September last year, the Honorable Minister of Education inaugurated the TETFund R&D Standing Committee with a mandate to invite industry, engage and partner with research institutes and government agencies.
TETFund in the past has contributed to human capacity building. They sponsored our members and other personnel in the tertiary institution framework within the tertiary institution setup.
What you see in many countries is research foundation, but in this context you are saying research and development foundation.
They are there to provide information, new research findings. They are there to come up with novel ideas.
For national development, you must have very strong research and development, not only just research and development, but foundation to be able to sustain information.
It's not that we don't have the indigenous knowledge of transforming these products, but the fact is that we must realize that we are also competing globally.
In fact, being an IT professional, one of the things that we've integrated, or we're going to integrate as far as the Food Security Center, is obviously a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary center.
Until we realize the benefits of R&D, we'll continue to procure equipment.
To translate into a new orientation of how lecturers and teachers, technologists, and all people who are working in the university, the stakeholders there, go about their duties.
we are not prioritizing research enough. We tend to have been emphasizing teaching, of course, at the expense of research. And I insist that one shapes, defines, and strengthens the other. Definitely it is research that shapes, strengthens, and defines teaching. If you are teaching and you are not improving courtesy of research, either through pedagogic skills, etc., then the quality of teaching and communication of knowledge diminishes. And that is the idea of my deciding on promoting the institutionalization of R&D, and there were actually supposed to be two levels. One, even emphasizing research in the university system, of course, as well as polytechnics and colleges of education, was important. But beyond that, I noticed a clear weakness in the Nigerian environment, being that the academia was much less concerned about establishing partnership, reaching out to industry. And I thought that was patently wrong.
There is an old joke where a man says, "I really want to go back to school, but it takes at least 7 years, and I'll be 50 in 7 years." A wise friend replies, "And how old will you be in 7 years if you don't go?" The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today, right now. If Nigeria is not where we want it to be, we must never let ourselves believe that change is impossible. Our future must not be limited to our current situation. We must stop complaining about what has gone wrong in the past and start investing our energy into what can go right. R&D is the means to achieve future growth and maintain relevance in the global market. It is the solution to poverty. It involves spending resources on investigation and testing to develop new products or new ways of doing things. New technologies can reduce the prices of goods and services to which they are applied. They also lead to the creation of new products. Consumers benefit from these improvements regardless of whether they live in rich or poor countries. Mobile phones are a clear example of the deep impact of some new technologies. In a clear case of technological leapfrogging, they have given poor people in developing countries access to long-distance communications without the need for costly investments in landlines and other infrastructure. Likewise, mobile banking provided through cell phones has enabled access to financial services in remote areas without bank branches. TETFund is the torchbearer, boldly inspiring the Nigerian industries, academia, and government to new frontiers by forging an unbreakable, mutually beneficial alliance for the growth of Nigeria's knowledge economy. And that is the paradigm shift.